And now I have an address of a contract. So remember that when you deploy a contract in Ethereum, an address is generated. This address is like the IP for a server or any particular resource in internet. In Ethereum, the identity is the address, which is similar to this. So this address, as you can see, is represented in hexadecimal, and there are 20 characters from the X to the N. Okay, so these characters are 20 bytes length, and all the Ethereum address have the same format. So we deploy the contract, and now, as you can see also in the console, we can see details about the transaction. For instance, what was the status of the transaction, the transaction hash, who sent the transaction. One good thing about Remix is that you can select different accounts, and if you notice, this account is the same that we have in the front. So that means that when we deploy the contract, we are deploying as this account. This is the source, okay? And then we can see details about how much gas it consumes, how much gas it costs to deploy this transaction, the execution cost, and then more information like logs, the coded output, the coded input, and of course the transaction hash. Okay, now let's do another transaction. If you notice this contract has two methods or functions. The function store that receives a value and sets the number value to the new value that I'm passing, and also a retrieve function that gives me this particular number. Since we haven't stored anything yet, we can try calling retrieve, and as you can see, a call to the smart contract was performed, and then it returned data, in this case 0, because the default value is 0. Let's say I want to store 100. Then I click store and check how the transaction was successful. Now what we do is checking the information of the transaction, like the transaction hash, who sent the transaction, to who we are sending this transaction, which is this address also, gas cost and transaction cost, and finally we can see the input that is decoded. And here we are saying the value that we are passing is an hexadecimal, and this is the value. So this is an interesting number. Let's see, because right now is represented as hexadecimal. Let's see what happens when we say Google, help me to find a hex to decimal converter. And we're gonna use this one, and let's paste the value and convert to decimal, and you see that is the 100. So this is just a decoded input, but check that we are passing the 100 and then the engine do the decoding. Okay, now if we retrieve the value, we have 100, which is good. Okay, so another thing that you can do is, you can try to recompile and everything should be good. If you notice, we had this artifacts folder. This artifacts folder is generated because we have this option to generate the artifact in a folder. We are going to disable, and then we can delete this folder that we don't need. Okay, and I think that's all for the introduction to Remix. We are going to continue with the rest of the exercises, and thank you so much.